for talking loud, and you know plenty. You know what I'm talking about, cause you just get me. Yeah, you so pretty. If everything is dipped in gold, then baby it will never grow. Everything sweet ain't sugar-coated. What a lie.
I've always wondered why white presenting mixed people and families that are multi-generationally mixed seem to trigger some people within the African diaspora. Is it historical trauma, justified judgment, or just simply jealousy? We'll discuss that in this video. Let's get into it.
Is it okay when non-Black Americans speak on the one-drop rule?
Now, we have to share space now, sometimes conditionally, with white-presenting Black women who, because of racial identity being ambiguous, have the curly hair and the white phenotypes, but because they're 3% white like Mary from Sinners, we gotta call her a Black woman, even though she ain't done none of the shit that we've had to go through, right? So Black women are already tired from the word Black woman being diluted with whiteness because of white supremacy.
Blue is a Haitian American, and in Haiti, the one-drop rule is non-existent. Like, if you were of the lighter skin tone, there's no such thing as a woman like Mary from Sinners being considered Black in Haiti. Like, that is non-existent. It's not happening. Now, when Siraj Bertin was selected to represent Haiti in the Miss Universe pageant, some people were upset. They thought she was too light-skinned to represent Black Haiti.
To get that. And I'm already sharing space with the white bitch because she got a curl pattern, right? Like, I'm tired. When do y'all just get to admit that this thing, this cis-het Black woman thing, this racially unambiguous Black woman thing, only I have truly experienced it like this?
Blue is correct. In Haiti, her and my great-great-grandmother would be two different racial categories and therefore a totally different experience. But in the United States, my grandmother, as fair as she was still a Black woman. Both her parents were born enslaved. The United States just has a very different history when it comes to Blackness. Civil rights leaders like Kathleen Cleaver or Diane Nash would not have to fight for Black rights in other countries because they wouldn't be considered Black. Let's be clear, Blue, of course, is going to have a different experience in some respects than a woman with a lighter tone. My mother has always told me that she never wants to take up space, and she always makes it clear that she knows that she has a different Black experience than someone with a deeper complexion than hers. So I believe that the one-drop rule conversation should stay within the Black American community, because when it leaves our community, the conversation can become hostile, because a lot of these lighter toned women would not be considered Black, but white in a lot of these other nations. I mean, they didn't even want her representing Blackness in Haiti. What do you guys think?
Passe blanc. Because if you know history, people that look like me, that actually have Black blood, that look like me, they moved away to pass for white. So they have a running joke about me being passe blanc, and I'm not, because I don't pass for white. I stay true to my bloodline, baby. So, joke's on you.
There was a law in Louisiana, and it stayed on the books until 1983. I was born in 1986. And it said that if you had more than 1/32nd, let me put the math up on the screen, of so-called Negro blood, you were designated as Black or colored, no matter what you looked like, no matter how you were raised, no matter how you saw yourself.
That's the point of them.
Do you really know what Creole means? Creole actually comes from the same root as words like create, creature, criar. So what Creole actually means is something that is of a place, especially something of a new place. So for example, the word Creole is used to refer to Afro-descendant people who are not necessarily African, but are Afro-descendants. They were Creole. They are criado in a place. So under this definition of Creole, where Creole means something that is of the place, now we can understand how the word Creole is applied to criollo food, right? Comida criolla, or Creole people, or Creole language. It is a language that is specifically of a place. As Afro-descendant people began to create new systems of knowledge, of food, of language in these new lands, the word Creole acquired a much wider meaning. So tell me in the comment section, what are some ways that your culture uses the word Creole or criollo?
Y'all, your girl Sunny made it to the internet. So obviously everybody knows by now I went viral a couple times for sharing my story about being biracial, and a year ago an article was made about me. Somebody wrote a little article, and it's honestly one of the craziest things I've ever read. I never talked about this article online because it's just absolutely ridiculous. Alrighty guys, here is the article. Yes, I am half black. Woman faces online side-eye for calling herself biracial after that reparations money. This is the most ridiculous part. Homegirl couldn't even get my name right. Monica, aka Summer Basil, poses next to her biological father. First of all, who is Monica? Who is Monica? Since when is my name Monica? Like, literally, who's Monica? Who? Because I don't know a Monica. Do you know a Monica? Monica, aka Summer Basil, is a sun-kissed blonde with green eyes who says she is often criticized by black women. But Monica's followers argue that she is simply making a case for reparations in California. Crazy you say that, love. The most embarrassing part of it all is when my dad FaceTimed me because he found this article first. I literally had to ask him what a reparations check was because my dumbass didn't even know. So apparently I was after that money, but I didn't even know it. Oh no, y'all. Your girl Sunny made it to the...
So I've seen all y'all posting about this Appalachian hair. And if you've done any research on it, you're starting to realize that that hair texture comes from being Melungeon. Now, what is Melungeon? I've done several videos with this picture before, and this isn't AI. This is a Melungeon woman from 1929, and I think she might be a relative. But this Appalachian hair texture y'all keep talking about, it comes from people being a triracial mix. A mix of African American, Irish or Turkish, and Native American. This triracial blend causes a unique hair texture. Sometimes you get frizz, sometimes you get curls, sometimes you get uneven patterns. And a lot of people, you'll hear them call them Irish curls. But you might hear an Appalachian person say, hey, my grandma, she was a Cherokee princess. Well, that's because they didn't want to be discriminated upon. Because, see, Melungeon used to be a very derogatory term. And it was frowned upon to be multiracial. So a lot of families would just say, we're all Cherokee, instead of admitting that they're actually triracial. But when you do one of them ancestry tests and you see your DNA comes back triracial, there ain't no denying it, honey. So the real question is, if this is not AI, which it's not, am I a time traveler? Or is this my ancestor?
I identify as white passing, which means that I'm white, but I'm also in denial of that. And I think it's funny, a lot of, white parents who have these children, they have this idea, they idolize the mixed kid. They're like, it's this manifestation of the MLK wet dream. It's unity in a baby. That's not what you're making. You're making a light-skinned boy named Caden who's going to ruin the spoken word club at Vassar. Ruin it. You are going to make a girl named Danica who's going to make a one-woman show in college that proposes 1 million questions and answers none of the questions, okay? If you give a mixed person a hard problem, look, I mean, if you give them a census, right? And they have to choose one box out of the two, what are they gonna do? They're gonna write a poem, okay? You exist within the context of all that came before you. That's one of our hits. That's one of our hits. That's what we do.
So first I want to talk about the historical, I guess you could say distrust of multi-generationally mixed people, specifically in North America. But if we want to connect it to the videos I showed, also in certain contexts in the Caribbean, specifically the English-speaking Caribbean, and that's important to point out. So let's say the Anglo-African diaspora. There are, in some contexts, this narrative surrounding multi-generationally mixed people or light-skinned people being distrustworthy or being people that have been treasonous. This is the narrative, right? And it's something very specific to the Anglo-sphere experience, and that's because of how the English kind of set up their slave system in a lot of cases, and how they worked to triangulate, I would say, Afro-descended people based on their skin tone. Not saying that the Spanish did not, but the Spanish did something which was a little different in the sense that they did degrees of acceptance through categories. I feel like that's how I interpret it. So yeah, when you think about it, of degrees of acceptance, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. So, I mean, if you put, you look at it in an intersectional sense and a hierarchical sense, people that are African descent are always left at the bottom tier, and that's pretty consistent regardless of what part of like the Hispanic diaspora, Afro diaspora you go to, like pretty much Latin America, excluding like the English and French speaking parts of it. The Spanish were pretty consistent, even though in different countries they did have different systems, different dynamics. There were different degrees that they brought in European immigrants trying to enforce blanqueamiento and stuff like that. Like, all of that varies, but what was pretty consistent is that there was always degrees of acceptance within the Spanish system in a way that the English system really didn't tolerate.
As the Spanish colonized the Americas, they kept much of the power within this community, and over time, as the class system of Latin America developed, we saw that Spanish people were usually at the top of this system, with indigenous people being at the bottom. Even over hundreds of years of mixing of these communities, we still see that in a majority mestizo country like Mexico, the higher you go on the class system, the higher the rates of Spanish DNA are, and the lower you go in the class system, the higher the rates of indigenous DNA is. Even when the people within these classes all identify as Latino, speak the same language, and have participated in the same culture for generations. This is a generalization, of course. People's ancestry isn't dependent on their class. However, there is a correlation, and we can see the same thing.
Why do Afro-Latinos struggle to be part of the Black diaspora? Not because Blackness is absent in Latin America, but because a lot of Latin American countries built their national identities by pushing Blackness away. Brazil and the DR are two really good examples of this. Different histories, different languages, but the same pattern. Both countries filter racial identity through a long list of labels that sit somewhere in between black and white. Mestizo, moreno, pardo, índio. With all these labels, the message ends up being that there is always a better label that's not black. And those ideas didn't come out of nowhere. In Brazil, after 300 years of slavery, the country promoted the idea that their racial mixing was proof that racism was not a problem anymore. Ironically, at the same time, Brazil also promoted whitening, encouraging European white immigration and promoting mixture as a way to dilute the country's blackness. In the DR, national identity was built around opposition to Haiti. So blackness was built around something over there, something that's only Haitian, that's foreign. Even though Dominican identity itself was shaped by African ancestry and black resistance. So the issue isn't that Latinos exist outside of the black diaspora. The issue is that we inherited national myths that told us to rename blackness before we could ever claim it.
I would also appreciate if you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are not already and the content resonates with you. Welcome, as well as making sure you hit the bell for notifications so you'll be informed every time I upload a new video or go live. I'd also encourage you to check out my Patreon, where you can access old and exclusive content, as well as having early access to new uploads. That will be linked in the description box below. Anglosphere, just the way slavery happened, and even though like in the Caribbean islands they were mostly doing like sugarcane and stuff like that, and in the American South it was a little different, the English pretty much went about things in similar ways. I'm not going to get into that, but that is where a lot of the hostility between light-skinned and mixed people historically, and deeper skinned or more predominantly African descendant people, yeah, so that's where a lot of that comes from in the Anglosphere. And we have to make that really specific because it's just not the same dynamic in the Hispano diaspora of this. And I'm trying to actively read more about the experiences of light-skinned and mixed people in a lot of the English-speaking islands, because when I was in school, a lot of my research focused around mostly Cuba and Brazil, actually, but just like the Spanish speaking region more so, and then of course like North America as well. That's pretty much a given. But I didn't do that much research on what was going on with mixed and light skinned people, like in the British, Scottish type of region. So that's been something I've been reading about recently.
This is a Jamaican phenotype I personally call the Santolid, or colloquially, the post-colonial browning. It's most common in the southwest, especially St. Elizabeth, but also appears in parts of Manchester, Westmoreland, and Clarendon through internal migration. It developed during the country's colonial era, but stabilized and became widespread after emancipation among small landholding mulatto families in St. Elizabeth's uplands. Compared with Uptown's light-skinned elite, urban, upper-class, and endogamous, the Santolid population is predominantly rural and middle-class, with higher rates of intermarriage with adjacent darker-skinned groups. The face is medium in length and width, broader and rounder in men, more oval in women. The nose is straight and medium to slightly narrow. The profile is mostly flat, sometimes mildly projecting. The skin is light to medium brown, with warm yellow, sometimes reddish, undertones. Hair is usually 3C to 4B and dark brown. On rare occasions, light brown and red occur. Eyes are dark brown with occasional amber and hazel hues. As for their genetics, roughly 60 to 75% of their DNA is African, 20 to 40% European, with small Asian traces in some families. One of Jamaica's most regionally distinctive, stable brown phenotypes, less cosmopolitan than Kingston's, yet very consistent over time. These are the post-colonial brownings of Jamaica's southwest. Which Caribbean group should I do next?
Bruh, I just hate when people look at me, they be like, bruh, where you from, Puerto Rico? DR? No, brother, me no come from DR, Porta, Blood Clot Rico, or none of that. Jamaica, Montego Bay, Bumba Clot, St. James.
As someone who grew up with two Jamaican parents and is a first-generation American, here are some words that I had to learn how to say, but the hard way, right? So like I was embarrassed when learning how to actually pronounce these words. Starting with number 1, Burgundy. It is not Burgundy, it is Burgundy. And I fought that all the way until age like 13. And I realized, no, I was wrong. It's Burgundy. Number 2, Pomegranate. Pomegranate. It's to the point where I have to literally slow my brain down every time I want to say pomegranate because I want to say pomegranate so bad. It's so bad. Condensed milk. Condensed milk. I recently learned that. I was talking to my boyfriend about this drink that my dad used to make. It called for condensed milk, and he was like, condensed milk? Condensed milk? You mean condensed milk? I'm like, wait. It just was something I never, mind blown. It was super embarrassing. This is more of a phrase. But I was on the phone with my little boo thing back in the day. I want to say like 9th, 10th grade. And he ended up falling asleep on the phone. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, did you drop asleep? Did you drop asleep? And he was like, what? He was so perplexed. And then it dawned on me, like, no, I meant to say, did you fall asleep? Like, drop asleep? No. No, babes. No. The last one is SETI. It took me a little while. I want to say I learned this maybe around age 7. I think once I went to grade school, I realized it wasn't settee, it was couch. You know, it was called a couch or sofa. But yeah, just the little things, you know, you wouldn't think it's, you know, it's patois, but it really is a language. And when you're the firstborn, it's kind of like, wait, I have to navigate these two worlds.
And I got a little sidetracked talking about that aspect of it because we are going to talk a little bit about Haiti in this video as well, because in the video the commenter mentioned that Blue Centric, one of the women that was making comments about Robin Dixon and the other lady that's multi-generationally mixed, one of them is like ambiguous and white passing. The other one to me looks more like a light-skinned black woman, just like really light-skinned. I mean, her facial structure to me looks, I think that's I forget their names, but not Robin. I think Robin is the one that I would consider more white presenting. The other one, oh, Giselle. I don't consider her white passing. To me, she looks like Vanessa Williams. And Vanessa Williams to me has a very similar facial structure to me, but Vanessa Williams just has like light eyes, light hair, and everything. I have dark eyes, dark hair, so you know it's a little different. But our facial structure is pretty Afro descendant. I've never had people think I'm white ever in my life. I can't see people thinking Giselle Bryant is actually white in real life. Now, sometimes when light-skinned women that are very, very light do the blonde hair thing, they do look white. I know this for a fact because this happens to my grandmother sometimes when she used to do really, really light hair, and sometimes she take pictures and she do look like a white woman. And she looks just like me. She has the same like facial structure. So yeah, I don't know, but and it's an interesting conversation to be had about what's perceived as like white presenting and ambiguous and things like that. I think that mixed people should start giving their perspective more about that, because a lot of this stuff has historically been dictated by monoracial people, and I think that growing up around a lot of Hispanic and mixed people does make a difference in how you understand mixed race phenotypes, but that's a video for another day. But yeah, so anyway, blue centric is Haitian, and shout out to the Haitians, big up to them all the time. You know, in the Caribbean, we have the utmost respect for Haitians. I literally have family members that's named after Haitian revolutionaries and stuff like that. So it's like, trust me, this is no shade to Haiti. But anyway, blue centric is Haitian, and the ongoing narrative is that like mixed and light-skinned people betrayed the black people during or you know darker skinned people, you know, because I consider us all black, but that's just me, and that's not the one drop rule, but I won't even get into that. Yeah, that's another piece of misinformation that people like to tote. But anywho, so yeah, the narrative is that mixed and light-skinned people were betrayed other black people during the revolution, and again, that is an oversimplification of what happened, because yes, there were a lot of mixed and light-skinned people that had a different position, so economically and socially they thought it was more feasible for them to align with the French. But there were also people who were on Toussaint Louverture's side and that were part of the revolution as well, and that's always been historically true. There was also fully black people who, you know, turned in the revolt and went against Toussaint and things like that. Like, that situation is nuanced, so I understand why like it's salacious to present the story like, oh yeah, these treasonous as mixed and light-skinned people, but the dynamic was a little bit more complicated than people want to put on. And it's always true that people in the present project their experience or what's happening today on the dynamic when things weren't that simple. And you got to understand, we're living in a colonial slave state under a crown that's miles and thousands of feet or miles away, whatever. I'm not good with measurements obviously, but yeah, when you're in that type of situation, it's like everybody's in survival mode, and that's something that's always irritated me. Like, I don't condone mixed and light-skinned people being coons or, you know, betraying people or whatever, but you gotta understand these people are in a destitute situation as well. They weren't all like super rich or like the most, even if you had like privilege and over other Afro-descendant people, or maybe have more financial, you know, gains, you got to understand the society that they're in. Do you really believe they actually had real freedom, even if they on paper were quote unquote legally free and not enslaved? You know, I just feel like it's yeah, it's just an oversimplification, like I said. And you know, unfortunately, I haven't gotten a chance to like really in-depthly look into that either, but I did briefly learn about it again when I was in school, because I did take a Caribbean Latin American class specifically like to learn about that. But it was like an anthropology class, but my major is in anthropology, so it was like kind of set up different. So anyway, but yeah, so during that class we did read a little bit about the Haitian Revolution and how like some mixed and light-skinned people were categorized as free people of color, and you know, they kind of own businesses and things, but there were also black people who owned businesses and now were free people of color. Toussaint Louverture was actually pretty well off. Like, he did pretty good for himself and he had a good relationship with his master, but the narrative is always, oh my gosh, these light-skinned people were privileged and they betrayed everybody. And yeah, the situation was just way more complicated than that. So yeah, but yeah, like I said, Toussaint Louverture was not destitute, but
raised in Harlem, my mom always told me that we were bourgeois. It was instilled in me that we were from this Haitian elite family, but yet we never lived that lifestyle. I often wonder, where were my bougie rights? I drank Kool-Aid, watched the Jeffersons, and I was in love with hip-hop music. While my mom had maids and chauffeurs, witnessed lavish parties, traveled to the beach all the time, and spent a large portion of her life in French boarding schools. Although my brother and I and all of my cousins were first-generation American, we were told almost daily of our rich legacy of the Haitian bourgeois society, and we all lived vicariously through the tales of the beautiful family stories.
To America, I came with my nose like this. But right away, I saw that lady was white. I came with the whole color.
Raised in
So, dans 2 derniers posts moi recevoir un pile commentaire négatif et honnêtement me saisi. On pas jamais expect comme si moi jamais moi bail comme ça, comme si mes amis nous just juger moun juste basé de couleur pomme, juste parce que qui ça, me trop blanche pour haïtienne. Il juste pas fait sens dans tête moi honnêtement et moi vraiment espérer que nous apprendre de ça n'a dit parce que lui juste pas fait sens et clairement haïtienne maman haïtienne papa haïtien grand-mère grand-moi grand-papa haïtien comme si moi fait ici moi fait Pétionville moi grandi ici so pas attendre mon ap dit que oh oui m'pa haïtienne et que ceci et que cela juste parce que me blanche pas fait sens so dans 2 derniers posts moi pour haïtienne il juste pas fait sens dans tête moi.
So I'm from New York and I just got back from Miami like a week ago. And I was just sitting back and reflecting on the cultural differences between New York and Miami. And one of the things that I was just thinking about, which nobody really talks about, is this weird underlying obsession with girls being like exotic and foreign. And I really hate using those terms because they just like, they ick me out. Like, I feel like it dehumanizes people so much when you say shit like, oh my god, you're exotic. I'm not a fucking bird, but for the sake of the video, I'm using those terms because that is word for word what I was hearing other people saying there. I noticed that there was this very strange obsession with being like mixed with something, which I'm really not used to in New York because I feel like in New York, it's like you are what you are and you're very proud of that. Like, if you're black and you say that and you're proud of that. Like if you're Latino, you say that you're proud of that. If you're Asian, you're Asian. It's like everything because it's very diverse. People are very accepting, yada, yada, yada. In Miami, it was different though. It was like everyone was asking you constantly in your business, like, what are you mixed with? Well, what are you? Are you Latina? Are you like, I thought it was very bizarre to a degree I had never experienced before. Mind you, I'm Haitian American. I never really get any issues when I tell people I'm Haitian American other than maybe a couple of ignorant people here and there who make ignorant comments. But like for the most part, I just say that it's like, okay, conversation is over, move on. But it's like when I was saying this to people in Miami, it was like, what? Literally, I got approached at the beach. I was at Miami Beach and someone approached me and was like, oh, well, what are you mixed with? First of all, where's hello, hi, how are you? No, but they jumped to what are you mixed with? I was very fucking confused and I was honestly annoyed because I hate questions like that. I genuinely hate them. And I was like, I'm Haitian, I'm black. Because that's what I tell people all the time. And that's never in New York. That's never an issue. People, again, it's like end of conversation, move on. He was like, no, that can't be possible. There has to be more. You have to be mixed with other things. And he went on and proceeded to tell me how in Colombia, there's women who look exactly like me, but they're not black and they would never identify with being black. I'm like, that sounds like a personal issue and I don't really know what to tell you. And I'm like, what is this like anti-blackness like sentiment? And what's up with people trying to tell you your ancestry and what you're mixed with? Please don't be concerned about me. Be concerned about yourself. Mind your business. I think what bothered me most about it is that every time I did tell people I was Haitian, I almost felt like there was this weird negative reaction to it, which is almost ironic because of the number of Haitians that there are. But I think it's because people were thinking or wanting me to say that I was something else, whether it was like Colombian, Dominican, whatever the fuck people like their preconceived notions about me. And then when it didn't match what they thought, it was almost like they were disappointed or annoyed when I said I was Haitian. And I'm not kidding, this happened like 3 times within the span of the week I was there. I never got approached once in New York, people asking me these types of questions. So yeah, I didn't really fuck with it or this weird obsession with being mixed and what are you mixed with and you're exotic and foreign. it's weird. It's really weird, and it's giving colorist. A lot of it was just giving colorist. That this is like a weird beauty standard, like you have to be mixed to be beautiful, and if you tell people that you're black, it's like they're mad or disappointed. I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way. And yeah, other than that, I guess Miami was cool or whatever. I couldn't live there, but you know, different strokes for different folks.
But yeah, when that nuance isn't explored and the narrative is always reinforced, people are going to take that as fact, and even today see mixed and light-skinned people as somebody that they should be not trusting, because that was the narrative that's culturally and historically being enforced, when it's not that serious. Mind you, none of us are living in the colonial French like slave quarters, and like, you know what I mean, like none of us are like in that situation, so you can't like project what you think or what you would do, or you know, talk crap about them because you weren't in that situation. And that's something that always irritates me when we get to talking about like mixed and light-skinned people's experience in history and the like so-called privilege they try to, you know, bestow on us. And what irritates me about it is, like, I just talked about the Spanish Costa paintings and all that type of stuff, like how that like reinforced, you know, hierarchies and race and things. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it's like, if you're a slave, how free and how much privilege are you really getting? And then it's like they can say on paper all day, oh yeah, we're treating these mixed kids better. In my opinion, I do not believe that that was actually happening in North America or Latin America. I've never believed that. And it's like, you can look at the outcome of people today and see that that's not the case. If these European men really cared about their mixed kids so much, why are their descendants in the same destitute position as fully black people today? Literally, if you go down to anywhere in Latin America and in North America, wherever, even in Africa as is, black people are always in the worst situation out of everybody else. So it's like, and it's the same thing for mixed and light-skinned people too, and that's even been proven as well. Like, there's not much difference earning wise between even like South African coloreds and the fully black population out there, because I've watched videos and read up on it. So like, these narratives like, oh my gosh, there's so much different and we're just two completely different groups, and it's like, even some mixed and light-skinned people are trying to present that idea here in North America, and it's like, that's completely counterproductive. Why would you try to import a failed ideology that people are getting rid of in Latin America? Like, why would you try to embrace that? But and the reason why it's a failed ideology is because it's not really accurate. And this, you know, fake buffer class narrative that Europeans try to push, that is not really material, that does not benefit people of African descent. And it's also causing unnecessary strife towards us. So I just feel like it's not any payoffs to it. And people are trying to act like it is a bunch of payoffs to it, and it's really not. And so anyway, to bring this back to Haiti and DR and all that type of stuff, I mean, even the island of Hispaniola is an excellent example of that. Like, yeah, economically DR is a little bit better off, but you know, DR still be going through their stuff too. DR historically went through their struggles with Spain and colonization, and even Haiti as well. And you know, people don't acknowledge that or talk about that part of it, but it's always like paints like, oh, the Dominicans were so evil, and you know, they just inherently hated the Haitians and stuff like that, when a lot of that colorism and, you know, internalized anti-blackness was socially engineered, starting with the Spanish years ago, and then through Rafael Trujillo. He was, you know, basically a mixed man with a lot of internalized anti-blackness. Unfortunately, we're still seeing stuff like that today, but anyway, he was a mixed guy with internalized anti-blackness, and he was teaching the rest of the country that wasn't an inherent thing, and that's a very specific political situation. But people also in the United States use that to, number one, paint all Dominicans, but they also use that as a reference to generalize Latinos in general, which is definitely not accurate, because the Dominican Haitian dynamic is very specific to their region and their island for, you know, historical reasons. But yeah, all of this stuff is used as historical evidence against mixed people, light-skinned people, and Afro-Latinos, and I just feel like that's just, yeah, it's an overgeneralization, and it's not fair either. And again, there's no empathy extended. Like, even if we're talking about house slaves in North America, okay, we can claim all day they had advantages being in the house. How many privileges and advantages, and how much better is your situation if you right up under your abuser? Most of these people were children, so only God knows what they were having to deal with and experience. You can't even get a moment of refuge because you got to be on 10 every minute on their beck and call. Like, what type of life is that? So it's like, all of these people were suffering under colonialism and under racism, anti-blackness, and white supremacist spiritual system that was being forced on them. Don't even get me started in the midst of all the stuff that already had happened to the indigenous peoples. So it's like, what are we even talking about here? And I've ranted and raved plenty about the dynamic with North American light-skinned people and how that story has been construed and used as historical evidence to say light-skinned mixed people are treasonous. So I'm not even going to go into that. But I do want to talk about how that was showing up in the Caribbean historical dynamic, because I've definitely been seeing that misinformation about, light-skinned people in Haiti too. And it's interesting because the light-skinned people in Haiti are in a really difficult situation as well, because everybody is going through it. But I even saw a video and they like live up in the mountains and like deal with poverty, and it's like they're not in a great situation today. So maybe that happened historically and like that's messed up, but I mean like look at the dynamic today. Everybody's in the same position. That's what I don't understand.
Rock has a half-black son, and that's the thing that trips me out about him and his attachment to white supremacy, is that he does it so hard that people forget that he has a half-black son. And at first I thought it was really weird that he would attach himself to something and a concept that his son will have no inheritance in, and of course that's his whiteness. But then I thought, you know what, it's a tale as old as time. Thomas Jefferson, the quote-unquote founding father, did it, right? He had children with Sally Heming, and his children looked so much like him that people often mistook them for each other as the children got older. And the crazy thing about it is, like, his attachment to the world he wanted to create had nothing to do with his children. And he was creating a world that his children would not benefit from. And I'm thinking also of Strom Thurmond, who had the second longest filibuster in American history, right? And the whole time he had a black daughter. He was paying for her tuition, paying for her to go to the best schools, paying for her to go to historically black colleges in South Carolina. And the whole time, he is filibustering the civil rights bill. That's how you know white supremacy is a pathology. Something's not right. The lights are on, but no one's home. Kid Rock has a half-black son.
And there's a lot of racism and colorism in the Dominican Republic when it comes to the Haitians. And I'm not saying every Dominican is racist, but a lot of it is. And it's because of Trujillo and how he thought that, being of a darker skin tone is ugly and etc. So which brings me to my point is that imagine, just for 1 second, that Haitians were white people, blonde hair, blue eyes. I'm pretty sure there wouldn't be a problem with them coming to DR. If anything, people would want to go there. People would want to have kids with them if they were. I assure you. If Haitians were white, blue eyes, blonde hair, Dominicans will be going to the Haiti part. I promise you that. And they will definitely let them invited inside the country. No problem. I'm Dominican, and there's a lot of racism and colorism in the Dominican Republic when it comes to the Haitians.
It's interesting. In Louisiana, all this talk about Haiti, right? In their connection with Louisiana. In my experience, at least in my family, the old timers, when they spoke about Saint-Domingue, it was always, the memory of Saint-Domingue is always a place with a lot of mixed race and white people. But when they talked about Haiti, it was black. So they made a distinction between Saint-Domingue, the mixed and white place, versus Haiti, the black place. So this is a question to my other Creoles and Cajuns out there. When your family has spoken about Saint-Domingue, is it the same? Have they always used it as like a place with a lot of race mixing? By the way, I'm not talking about DR when I say Saint-Domingue. You'll have to see my other video. In Louisiana, when people talk about Saint-Domingue, they're talking about colonial Haiti, Saint-Domingue, not DR.
Anti-blackness and the proximity to whiteness are the two main reasons why there's such a to whiteness. Anti-blackness and the proximity to whiteness are the two main reasons why there's such a huge disconnect between Spanish-speaking Caribbean countries and non-Spanish-speaking Caribbean countries, even though we are literally the same. And I'll prove it to you via food, which is the language that connects us all. Just bear with me. And I'm also speaking from a Dominican lens here as someone who's first-gen parents from the Dominican Republic. And if I offend you, don't care. Dominicans have tied their proximity to whiteness through the Spanish language, but the island actually thrives off its blackness. When you take a step back and look at our culture through the lens of culture and music, it's super evident that blackness is at the forefront. But it is especially true when it comes to our foods. The whiteness that Dominicans love to uphold, and I know we're mixed, we're Spanish, this, that, and that. It's 2025, just shut the, come on. That whiteness that they love to uphold is nearly through the language. Mind you, Spaniards consider Dominican Spanish to be ghetto, not proper, too hard to understand because we talk too fast. And where have we heard this before? Just look at our brothers and sisters right next to us with Haitian Creole or Jamaican Patois. Anyway, unity throughout the diaspora is most connected when we look at how we eat. But so much of it gets lost in literal translation. And the Spanish language causes that rift. But I want to show you, once you remove that barrier, once you actually look at it for what it is, Caribbean people are all one. Let's start here. In Spanish, we call this moro, English, rice and peas. We call this pollo guisado or guisao, in English, brown stewed chicken. This right here, we call it pescado en escabeche or escabeche fish. This is called a ďaňiqueque, and it literally means Johnny cake. ďaňiqueque, Johnny cake. They tried with the English, so they just found a way to remix it. ďaňiqueque, same thing. See this right here? We call it dumplings or dumplings. We have flour dumplings, cornmeal dumplings, even plantain dumplings. Bacalao or saltfish. We call this maíz caquiao or hominy corn porridge. I love this. Chivo guisado, stewed goat. Dominicans love goat. And finally, plátanos.
And it's actually ironic that we was just talking about Haitians, because I'm going to ease into talking about white presenting mixed people, specifically white presenting first generation biracial people. And we can get into the nuances with that talking point as well, but that's kind of what we're going to be talking about here, not white presenting multi-generationally mixed people like Robin Dixon, because I feel like that's kind of a different situation. But when you have a directly white or non-black parent and then a multi-generationally mixed black parent, which a lot of, I would say 80% of I don't even know about that, because just because somebody's brown skin or dark skin doesn't mean they're not multi-generationally mixed. So we don't know how many of these biracial kids that are white presenting, we don't know how many of their black parents are actually multi-generationally mixed genetically. So that's where the nuance comes in here. As where Robin Dixon, who is multi-generationally mixed African American, she kind of looks like that because that's just how her percentages panned out, and that's a whole different struggle in itself. Maybe I'll make a separate video for that, because I have known of people that are like that. I actually personally have family members, and I like have people in my lineage and people that, you know, are still alive today, obviously, that are in that same situation. Funny enough, I didn't even think about it, but yeah, so that's another reason why I'm kind of defensive of mixed presenting, white presenting mixed people, just because I guess you could say I understand they mean no harm. Or I don't know, I can't describe it. Like, I'm just defensive of them because I just feel like people like put a lot of unnecessary judgment on them, and it's like not always rooted in real experiences with them. It's rooted in like assumptions, and I've just had a lot of experiences with white presenting mixed people. So I think that that's why I feel kind of like defensive. And, you know, when you have people in your family that look different than you, obviously, like I feel that same way about my family members that are darker than me. I would feel defensive of them as well. So it's kind of the same vibe. But anyway, speaking of Haitians, why I said that was because I personally know a biracial dude. I grown up with him when I was little. I probably haven't talked to this dude, like family friends. You know, our families used to like go out to dinner or go to each other's houses, you know, for holidays and stuff like that, like when I was real little. So I probably haven't seen this dude in maybe 15, 20 years, if even more than that, honestly, since I was a real little girl. But anyway, he had a very light-skinned Haitian mother and an Austrian father. And I've mentioned him in other videos before, but anyway, eventually they moved back to Austria. He's like living his best Austrian dude life out there. But yeah, he's a white presenting biracial dude, and he always looked white. He still, as far as I know, per the Facebook post my mom shows me, he still looks white. And it just was what it was. And as a little girl, I didn't really like think much of it, to be honest. Like, I'm gonna be so honest with you though. I definitely had more of like a Hispanic Latin American mentality towards race though as a little girl, because I viewed him as a white kid, even though I viewed his mom as a light-skinned black woman and his dad as white. I knew very much well that he was biracial. And I knew what a biracial person was because I had a lot of family friends that were biracial. So I saw family dynamics with, you know, black dad, black mom, white parent, you know, white mom, white dad, whatever. So it wasn't abnormal to me, but I kind of took people's race as face value of what they were. I wasn't taking into account the generational mixedness or, you know, oh, this parent is this. I wasn't even thinking about that. I literally just thought about race as in how that person looked. So I knew his mom was black, but I perceived him as white because he looked white to me. And that's just kind of how I understood race. And it wasn't until I got older that I started to look at it differently. But anyway, yeah, I also always thought it was interesting that his mom was very light skinned, because all the other Haitians I knew were very dark skinned and looked like Africans, Jamaicans, Bahamians as well. A lot of us are very dark skinned usually, don't look anything like me. Most Bahamians are very, very dark. The same thing with Haitians. So I was like, okay, this is very interesting. But yeah, his mom's genes didn't even try, because he looked just like his Austrian father. But yeah, and then on top of that, like growing up, I always heard the experiences that my white presenting, and I don't even know if you could call them white presenting as much as they were just ambiguous, but because they lived in the Midwest, people only see things in a black white dichotomy. This was my African American side, obviously. So yeah, I would always hear these stories about even their experience in the South and how they were in a lot of danger in the South, because people had an issue with very light-skinned people, because they thought they were like uppity Negroes, or they thought they would try to pass, so you could really get inched with a tree, if you catch my drift. You could get inched if they thought that you were uppity, or thought you were trying to do something you weren't allowed to do because you were black. So when you have people playing games on here talking about one drop rules and blaming black people for that, that's honestly very insidious, because there's a reason why you have a bunch of white passing people who are calling themselves black, and it has nothing to do with black people, but it has everything to do with white supremacy, racist terrorism. But anyway, so yeah, and then even coming to the North, cities like Detroit, Chicago, these cities were racist as shit. I showed in a video that I have, dang, I think I have it privated, but anyway, I did a review of I forgot that dude's name. He had a talk show back in the 80s, but anyway, it was reviewing mulattoes who passed for white, and one of the women were talking about how her family lived in Chicago, and that they got a Molotov cocktail through the window, and her little sister ended up unaliving, and that they were dealing with a lot of racism because they were white passing, but the white people found out they were black. And my family had the exact same experience in Chicago too. People don't know Chicago was racist as hell and was very segregated, and my family was one of the first black families in the area. But anyway, yeah, that's the experience I speak from. And then my dad's side, they're immigrants from the Caribbean, so yeah. But yeah, like that's the experience I speak from, so that's why I'm like very passionate about this stuff, and I'm like very serious about the whole like one drop rule, like white passing thing. Is like, yeah, people are, I'm not gonna say victims of their circumstances, but people are just trying to survive, like they didn't mean any harm. And I don't think that if any discrimination or mistreatment based on color was engaged in, that's really messed up, and I don't support that or agree with that at all. None of that weird blue vein, pink, like I don't agree with none of that, or the paper bag, any of it. But you also got to understand the times, and you just got to empathize with people in the historical context they existed in.
Being a biracial person who is white presenting is a really interesting experience, because I always get the same question: how black are you? And when I get that question, I never really know how to answer it, because I know that somebody is looking for a definite percentage or number. And obviously, looking at me, I look like a white guy. And if you're asking about my DNA percentage, of course it's low. Look at me. I phenotypically look like a white person. But answering in that way completely negates my history, my family's history. So a little bit of background about my personal family history. I am a descendant of one of the first registered interracial marriages in America. I'm still learning about this, but it was a marriage between a freed slave named Gould and a slave owner's daughter. I believe her name was Elizabeth. And that happened in the 1600s. They started a family, and that family has been light-skinned for a very long time because of the interracialness. But this brings up a really interesting point, which is my dad, who is the son of two very prominent Black history figures. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was a mechanic in the Tuskegee Airmen. My grandmother, my dad's mom, was one of the first African-American female police officers in the United States. The US government didn't care about their light-skinned skin tone. They were black. Now, I didn't grow up with my grandparents. They died before I was born. But my dad raised me to be very proud of my family lineage and to be a very proud interracial, biracial person. He taught me about how to handle myself if somebody were to call me the N-word. He taught me about how to handle myself around police officers at an extremely young age. But growing up, I would always get the same question, which is, how black are you? Going back to that point that somebody wants a percentage. Are you half? Are you a quarter? Are you whatever? And I'm not unique in this fact. My dad, who grew up at the tail end of segregation, also went through the similar type of thing. Even though by the US government he had 2 black parents, he was still assumed to be a white person occasionally. He told me about times he was walking to elementary school and he was beat up by the white kids on the way there and beat up by the black kids on the way home. And finally, one of his cousins protected him and say, "Y'all, why are you beating up Butch? He's black." And they were like, "Oh, interesting. We didn't know." And then he told me about a situation that happened in college where a race war broke out during lunch, and his fraternity brothers, who were predominantly Jewish, protected him because people didn't know how he identified, because he was a lighter-skinned black person. And then fast forward to me. An acquaintance of mine asked me, "Where is my hair from?" And I told him that it's black. And he said, "No, not the color of your hair. Like, what ethnicity are you? Is it?" I told him that I'm biracial, and he was like, "What are you talking about?" Another situation happened to me where somebody found out that I was biracial, and I'm at the gym and they are a white guy, and they said, "Oh, no wonder you're so strong." But the reason I bring this up is because it is an interesting thing to begin to talk about. I am navigating this. I've always navigated it. I am trying to bring up this conversation within myself and do it in a public setting. And it's scary and it's hard because people have opinions about it. The last time I talked about this publicly, I got a note from a person that was extremely long that was berating me and telling me that I will never be black. And as much as that hurt me, I understand what that person was talking about. But I'm not trying to be black. I'm trying to lean into my heritage. I'm trying to love and accept this part of me. And I really deeply am. Another criticism I've gotten recently is that I have a white girlfriend. People have told me that my black side, my blackness is dying. And to that, my response is, it only goes away if I stop accepting. And I don't want to stop accepting. When I have children, if I am to have children, I am going to tell them and teach them about our family history. I know that their skin color will be light. But does that take away their family heritage? Does that take away their bits of blackness? I invite you to have some discourse with me, because I know that this is hard, but I'm willing and wanting to talk to you about it. Anyways, I'll talk to you later. Being a biracial person who is white presenting is a really interesting experience because I always get the same question, how black are you? And when I get that question, I never really know how to answer it because I know that somebody is looking for a definite percentage or number. And obviously, looking at me, I look like a white guy. And if you're asking me about my DNA percentage, of course it's low. Look at me. I phenotypically look like a white person. But answering in that way completely negates my history, my family's history. So a little bit of background about my personal family history. I am a descendant of one of the first registered interracial marriages in America. I'm still learning about this, but it was a marriage between a freed slave named Gould and a slave owner's daughter. I believe her name was Elizabeth. And that happened in the 1600s. They started a family, and that family has been light-skinned for a very long time because of the interracialness. But this brings up a really interesting point, which is my dad, who is the son of 2 very prominent Black history figures. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was a mechanic in the Tuskegee Airmen. My grandmother, my dad's mom, was one of the first African-American female police officers in the United States. The US government didn't care about their light-skinned skin tone. They were black. Now, I didn't grow up with my grandparents. They died before I was born. But my dad raised me to be very proud of my family lineage and to be a very proud interracial, biracial person. He taught me about how to handle myself if somebody were to call me the N-word. He taught me about how to handle myself around police officers at an extremely young age. But growing up, I would always get the same question, which is, how black are you? Going back to that point that somebody wants a percentage. Are you half? Are you a quarter? Are you whatever? And I'm not unique in this fact. My dad, who grew up at the tail end of segregation, also went through the similar type of thing. Even though by the US government he had 2 black parents, he was still assumed to be a white person occasionally. He told me about times he was walking to elementary school and he was beat up by the white kids on the way there and beat up by the black kids on the way home. And finally, one of his cousins protected him and say, "Y'all, why are you beating up Butch? He's black." And they were like, "Oh, interesting. We didn't know." And then he told me about a situation that happened in college where a race war broke out during lunch and his fraternity brothers, who were predominantly Jewish, protected him because people didn't know how he identified, because he was a lighter-skinned black person. And then fast forward to me. An acquaintance of mine asked me, "Where is my hair from?" And I told him that it's black. And he said, "No, not the color of your hair. Like, what ethnicity are you? Is it?" I told him that I'm biracial, and he was like, "What are you talking about?" Another situation happened to me where somebody found out that I was biracial and I'm at the gym and they are a white guy and they said, "Oh, no wonder you're so strong." But the reason I bring this up is because it is an interesting thing to be in to talk about. I am navigating this. I've always navigated it. I am trying to bring up this conversation within myself and do it in a public setting. And it's scary and it's hard because people have opinions about it. The last time I talked about this publicly, I got a note from a person that was extremely long that was berating me and telling me that I will never be black. And as much as that hurt me, I understand what that person was talking about. But I'm not trying to be black. I'm trying to lean into my heritage. I'm trying to love and accept this part of me. And I really deeply am. Another criticism I've gotten recently is that I have a white girlfriend. People have told me that my black side, my blackness is dying. And to that, my response is, it only goes away if I stop accepting. And I don't want to stop accepting. When I have children, if I am to have children, I am going to tell them and teach them about our family history. I know that their skin color will be light. But does that take away their family heritage? Does that take away their bits of blackness? I invite you to have some discourse with me because I know that this is hard, but I'm willing and wanting to talk to you about it. Anyways, I'll talk to you later.
Miscegenation. Do you know how diabolical it is to come on the internet as a white presenting? Do you know how diabolical it is to come on the internet as a white presenting person and admit that you descend from a generationally beige family, intentionally so, who, since the first couple of a white woman and black man were able to beat back the criminality of miscegenation in the 1600s, every generation of your family has intentionally chosen to create a phenotype that rids itself of its African identity. And that for the past 300 years, they have intentionally been procreating in a way that produces beigeness over and over again to produce you sometime in the late 20th century. And somehow you have fed into the cultural phenomenon that only TikTok can produce, where white passing, multiracial, biracial people get on the internet and think they are serving some sort of gotcha, and it's really just engagement bait with they light-skinned daddies. And you're telling this story because somehow you want to do what with your African American heritage? What exactly is it that you want to do as you tell us the story of your very light-skinned, intentionally beige daddy who was in a frat of mostly Jewish men and then chose to co-produce with a white woman, produced you, and now you, not only are you partnered with the white woman, but you are fully enmeshed in the white community. And here's the gag. The gag is you don't have to look black for the African American community to accept you. You are not the first multiracial, biracial, white presenting person with a barely black, light-skinned daddy who wanted to be in the community. It's just, you are accepted in the community as long as you are of the community. I know plenty of people that present as white who, because they grow up around their black side of the family, they are in community with their black cousins, they black aunts and uncles. There's not this mystic great grandparent that existed that, you know, was the first Negro to do whatever, and you talk about them as if you're reading from a book. These people went to church on Sunday with their black family. They broke bread on Thanksgiving with their black family. And for them, it is not a performance. They are a member of the community, because that is sort of the complexities of being African American. This man, however, has a white girlfriend, a white mother, and is living in Austin, Texas, and not engaging anything with the black community. He's coming to TikTok to talk about, I'm figuring it out. Nigga, go down the block. Y'all in the comments talk about black freckles. I want y'all to stop handing out invitations to people that are not doing the work. Because if he wanted to be in the community, he would be in the community. That's the real gag of it all. But his family has made choices that are fully invested in colorism, in elitism, in anti-blackness to continually over and over and over again produce a certain sort of phenotype of beigeness that it just turned into whiteness within their family lineage. Do you know how diabolical?
So yeah, y'all just saw that video or those collection of videos, but one of them in which being Julzey dragging the shit out of that white presenting mixed dude. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to laugh because it's not a funny situation, but why did she drag him like that? Like, I'm sorry, I'm so unserious. Like, I'm so immature. I'm sorry, but like, she like really went in on him. Like, somebody must have messed her lunch order up that day. Because she really went in on him. And it's so funny because I got an aunt that looked like Julzey, and then I got great uncles that look like the white presenting mixed dude. You know what I mean? Like, so I just sit back and laugh at the light skin shenanigans. And I've done a video about Julzey before because me and Julzey, we on the same tip. You know, she's light-skinned black woman that talk that womanism hot shit. You know what I mean? Like, she makes a lot of great points about stuff. But I'm sorry, we very rarely agree when it comes to isms conversations. But at the same time, we actually absolutely agree because in the moral of it, we all, well, both of us, we care about how racialization and isms are affecting the self-love and mental health of black women. We have the same goal, but we just have different belief systems around that, I guess you could say. So, you know, of course, the context of the video I did was, you know, checking Julzey for being a light-skinned apologist, even though she means no harm and she's doing it because she, you know, she cares about other black women and she's doing it because she's trying to be supportive, and I respect that. But dragging the shit out of mixed presenting people and always talking crap about other light-skinned women, I just don't see this as productive because we're light-skinned women too. Like, I mean, we're black women too. Like, we're black women too. This dude could be a black woman's son. I just told you about a black woman's son that I know that comes from a very similar experience to this dude. I don't understand why we have to try to beef with the biracials, like, especially when Julzey's light skinned too. She knows what's up. Like, you know, a lot of light skinned black women, they try to play coy about the dynamic. You know, those of us that touch grass, we know what's really going on here. So that's why I can kind of like roll my eyes and just ignore people like Julzey, even though I made a video about her. And you know, here and there I'll address light skinned women who are light skinned apologists and say these weird things on the internet, but at the end of the day I understand they don't really mean any harm, but what you're saying is obnoxious and it's just annoying. And I also found it kind of odd that she reacted that way because this dude is actually the prototype for the exact type of biracial person that black women specifically, but the greater black community in general, says that they want, and the way that they believe a biracial child should be raised. And I actually agree. From what I heard, it seems like his father did a good job and his father made him aware, and it seems like he's very self-aware. And I've watched a few of his videos. First of all, he's fine as hell, so that's probably why they're triggered. You know, they get very triggered with the tall, dark, and handsome white guy aesthetic, I noticed, because I don't know if y'all remember when black men and black men worshipers were crashing out behind Luigi Mangione and they were very jealous of him. And I've noticed this, so I don't know if that's what it is. It's a little freckle jealousy or something going on. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, I don't understand what the problem is. Like, he seems very self-aware. He's not obnoxious. You know, it seems like his parents made him even his white mother, it seems like they both, did a good job of, like, making him aware of his race and things. So I don't really understand what the problem is. So I didn't understand why she reacted so strongly. But I believe she reacted like that because for some reason, white presenting multi-generation mixed people, but biracial people at the same time, seem to really bother black people on social media today. And this has always been going on. But I wanted to talk about this because this whole quote unquote white passing conversation is really not relevant to how society works today. And I've been saying this about a lot of aspects of the isms conversation. A lot of these conversations are stuck in the 1930s and the 1980s. Like they're just not like relevant to how society works today, especially now with the internet and everything.
No one talks about growing up with the black mom and being mixed, but like being like, that is such a trippy experience. Like, my mom instilled a lot of black power into me, and it just don't match. Like, I do not have the same experience. And so talking about being mixed, I just feel like an imposter, and I just sometimes feel like I come across as like a phony, like, who just wants to join the club, but like, let me in. But it's true, I love my mom, and like, she raised me to be a strong black woman, but unfortunately my genes said No one talks about.
Mother made it very, very obvious that being racially white gave me a lot of advantages that she didn't have, or any other person who's more melanated didn't have. Especially since I had my father's last name, I didn't have my mother's last name, so it's very Americanized. Things like jobs, job interviews, job applications. I know from being a manager for a very long time that a lot of times companies do profile people based off of their last name. And when they do face-to-face interviews, a lot of people cannot escape their natural bias, and they will lean towards somebody who is white or more white presenting because that's who they're most familiar with, or they have some kind of stereotype in their mind or some brand image that they're trying to keep up. And then there's societal advantages because of racism. For example, you have an intersection, there's stop signs and there's crosswalks. You have a car coming up. The person who's driving the car is a white person who has a bias, or they are racist. One situation where the white person who's driving has the...
To those who are always like, you're not mixed race, to those people that walk around in life and look at mixed race people and go, you're not mixed race, you're not mixed race. What do you actually gain out of it? Because we still are, whether you like it or not, or whether your opinion is that I look or don't look mixed race, I still am. Sorry. Still am, actually, so it doesn't really matter what you think. Sorry. But when I see you, man, harassing people in the comment section when mixed race people bring up that they're mixed race, and there's always someone, like, really going in on them in the comments, what do you gain? Because whether you like them being mixed race or not, that person is still mixed race. Like, every time I post, God forbid, post anything about Jamaica, everyone's like, I know, I'm mixed race. I'm actually mixed race. I feel like all the time, especially us, the undercooked mixed race people, every time I see it, I'm like, well, we still are. You're like, you're not mixed race in the comment section, harassing people all the time, but we actually still are. We're still mixed race. I don't really know where you're going with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, what do you gain from that?
No, y'all, your girl Sunny made it to the internet. So obviously everybody knows by now, I went viral a couple times for sharing my story about being biracial, and a year ago, an article was made about me. Somebody wrote a little article, and it's honestly one of the craziest things I've ever read. I never talked about this article online because it's just absolutely ridiculous. Alrighty guys, here is the article. Yes, I am half black. Woman faces online side-eye for calling herself biracial after that reparations money? This is the most ridiculous part. Homegirl couldn't even get my name right. Monica, aka Summer Basil, poses next to her biological father. First of all, who is Monica? Who is Monica? Since when is my name Monica? Like, literally, who's Monica? Who? Because I don't know a Monica. Do you know a Monica? Monica, aka Summer Basil, is a sun-kissed blonde with green eyes who says she is often criticized by black women. But Monica's followers argue that she is simply making a case for reparations in California. Crazy you say that, love. The most embarrassing part of it all is when my dad FaceTimed me because he found this article first. I literally had to ask him what a reparations check was because my dumb ass didn't even know. So apparently I was after that money, but I didn't even.
And so when you call somebody quote unquote white passing, it implies that they're trying to present themselves as racially white and quote unquote purely in the American context, Caucasian. And we know that that's an incorrect term even in itself, so I really shouldn't even be repeating it. But the point is that it's a historical context surrounding a person, quote unquote, passing for white. And even when it comes to that experience, that conversation irritates me, because just because somebody presented phenotypically as white, maybe like Walter Plessy, does not mean they inherently were trying to, quote unquote, pass and present themselves as a white person. Passing is an action word that you do. When people passed, they didn't just be like, oh, I'm gonna run over to ShopRite and pretend to be white real quick. That was not what was happening. If you were passing to be white, that is a whole huge production just to do that, and you have to lose contact with your family and community completely. There's a YouTuber, I think her name is NYNTT, something like that. Shout out to her. She's been putting in a lot of work for this type of like content in terms of like North American mixed history and stuff like that. Like, shout out to her. She really has done some great work. But anyway, I like to joke to myself and say that my family chose to be black, her family chose to be white. Because she's in the same situation as me, where she had like great grandparents that were, mixed race and white presenting basically. And so her family basically chose to move out of her family member moved out of the South and went to the North and passed for white. But when my family came to the North, they didn't pass for white. They saw themselves to be black, and they, just married really other light-skinned people. That's really what happened. But yeah, and brown-skinned and dark-skinned people too, because there's a lot of brown-skinned and dark-skinned people in my family as well. But I will say the vast majority of people are light-skinned. And for a long time people were marrying it. And people want to get into that. That's another thing I wanted to touch on too. Because Julzey's like, oh, you guys were trying to trying to be create a beige color, something like that. And it seemed like what she was really triggered about was that the father was from mixed heritage, and she was like saying that they tried to keep their family white or light skin or something like that. But what I always find interesting about that conversation is, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, sometimes people just like and want to be with people that are similar to them, and it's not a slight to anybody else. And it's like, I'm gonna just stop like trying to like I don't know, stop trying to like explain myself. And it's just like, that's just simply what it is. Like, I don't think that it was always about like, oh, trying to keep it white, trying to get it light. Like, it wasn't always blanqueamento, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes people just like other mixed and light skinned people, and we like the blackness in the form that we have it, and we see beauty in our counterpart. Now, we can get into the dustiness of the male-female dynamic in the Afro-descendant community, but we don't have to talk about that right now. But it wasn't always about colorism or trying to keep it light and white. And that's something I've been wanting to touch on, because it was a similar dynamic in my family too. And I never heard anything colorist, anything about skin tone, anything about anti-blackness. My family really never talked about race or skin tone at all. I'm talking about my extended family, which also can lead to certain issues, because if you're not talking about race, then your kids don't know how to address it. My family was more invested in religion than they were in race. So the dominant identity was religion. It was not race. So I think that that's kind of the difference. So that's not to say there wasn't maybe problematic things said. I've talked about my experience with texturism, but I will say I never got any colorist messaging from my family at all. And I come from a similar lineage to this dude, and it sounds like his family was very intentional about instilling pride and love of blackness and Afro-descendantness into him, just like my family did. Even though it wasn't really strongly enforced, it was more passively enforced, I guess. But I also wasn't taught a bunch of negativity either. And they always stereotype light-skinned families as teaching colorism, or y'all were just trying to keep it light. You didn't want any of the kids to come out dark. And of course, there are families that are like that. I'm not denying that at all. But to just assume that because somebody comes from a mixed lineage that was intentional because of colorism really irritates the hell out of me. First of all, it's not your fucking business why people's family got together, or why people look the way they do, or why people's parents present the way they do, or why you identify the way they do. It's nobody else's business. But if we're gonna have a conversation about it, we can address it's not always rooted in negativity at the same time. And what I find really ironic is that I'm constantly hearing and seeing about people that come from all brown skin and dark skin, or mostly dark skin families, and they all got white partners. Like, I don't know that many light skin families where the members have a bunch of white family you have a bunch of white partners. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I never grew up seeing that as somebody who grew up in a Hispanic and mixed like area and around a lot of people who were. I did not grow up seeing that. I did not grow up seeing the people around me chase whiteness. If anything, they were trying to get the kids darker because they were mostly dating people that were way darker or way blacker than them. So I find that interesting. So I think a lot of it has to do with the type of family you have, and to just assume because a family is light skin or mixed, oh, that automatically means they're colorist and that was intentional. I'm sorry, but there are a lot of brown skin and dark skin families that are intentionally trying to become lighter and whiter at the same time. And I understand, yeah, there's a conversation about that already happening, but it's being had very passively, as where when people are addressing mixed and light skin people, they're very assured in the bullshit that they're saying and they feel loud. They're very loud and wrong because they feel like they have this historical evidence supporting what they're saying. But yeah, I'm really proud of how this video came out. I got a lot off my chest that I've been wanting to say. But y'all get in the comment section, let me know what y'all thought about what I shared and get in the comment section and let me know what you thought about my commentary, as well as your thoughts on Julzey's perspective and Blue Centric's perspective. Do you agree with me? Do you agree more with them? Do you feel like we're both right? Let me know. Thanks for all the support. Peace.